One of the reasons I'm here in Saugerties is because I'm married to an extremely famous person, Tim Cole, famous baseball player, out there. He'll sign baseballs for you if you want later, okay? Just saying. Okay, for the next 3 hours, I will be talking about patience and long suffering. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally just kidding. I'm not going to be talking for 3 hours. I mean, I don't want to go just on and on and on and on. You know what I'm saying? But if I do go on and on and on, there is a 12-step group for that. It's called On and On and On. Okay, so earlier I talked about how difficult it is to have faith in a higher power, but there are things you can do that actually change your brain, like mindfulness meditation, gratitude, and actually prayer actually does have effects on the prefrontal cortex and on making you less susceptible to addiction. But today I want to talk, this afternoon I want to talk about hope. So I'm going to tell you a little once upon a time story. Once upon a time, there was a young man, the son of a physician. He loved to read and he loved to write. But in his young life, a horrible tragedy struck him. His mother died when he was just a boy. Even though he had a passion and a talent for writing, at his father's urging, he enrolled in medical school. He was 18 years old. For the next 8 years, he trained to be a physician, but he had a problem. His heart was not in medicine. In fact, he tried to enroll in the military to escape being a physician, but he was rejected by the military. His passion was poetry and writing. He left home at 26, and instead of working as a doctor, he tried to make a go of it as a writer. For 3 years, he worked odd jobs on the side to make money. Meanwhile, he was sliding into poverty, into homelessness, and into addiction to opium. Okay, so let's stop right there. This guy, a trained medical doctor, was now homeless, living on the street, selling matches, addicted to opiates. You might imagine the story ending with him overdosing or killing himself. But the story doesn't end like that. Our homeless man considers suicide. And one night when he is on the verge of despair, thinking about suicide, he has a vision. And the vision is from that of a poet 100 years before him who had committed suicide. Our man sees this poet and he has hope. He decides not to kill himself. He returns to selling matches, living from opium to opium, and writing. He writes a poem, and he sends the poem to the publisher of the Merry England publication. He leaves his return address, since he's homeless, as the post office. So this editor reads his work and immediately recognizes the talent of the writer. But when he sends the letter to the return address, the letter bounces. The ingenious editor decides, I am gonna just publish this, and maybe the guy will see that it's published and he'll contact me because I know this guy can write. So he does it. And our poet, our homeless poet, addicted to opiates, sees his poem, writes to the editor, and says, here's the address you can find me. It was the chemist's shop where he bought his opium. So the editor, eager to meet our homeless writer, travels to the chemist shop where he pays off the debt that the man had for his opium. He couldn't pay for it and he had gone into debt. Our man is invited to live with the editor, with his wife and children, who become dear friends and essentially family. Okay, so this is not actually a made-up story. This is a real story. This story was 130 years ago. Our homeless, opiate-addicted, medically trained poet is Francis Thompson. Has anyone heard of Francis Thompson? Anyone heard of Francis Thompson? Just now. Okay, it's awesome. It's awesome. His work has become well-known and well-loved. If you Google him, you will see how many writers, how many musicians, how many poets, how many movies, all sorts of things have been inspired by his poetry. Okay? Totally awesome. Okay, so this talk is on hope and how fragile it is, but how it can be passed on when we feel the most hopeless. Okay, so I want to tell you a second, once upon a time, about a second medical student. This one involves a medical student who thought she had lost all her hope. She woke one morning as a first-year medical student to a feeling in her gut as if the insides had fallen out. There was nothing inside. And she saw nothing outside except what looked as if the world was on a TV screen, like she didn't actually live in the world. She could no longer eat. She could not even look at her face in the mirror. There was a shoe print on the ceiling of her apartment where she had thrown a shoe as hard as she could at God. But God must have ducked because the shoe hit the ceiling. She actually thought she was losing her mind. She checked into an outpatient clinic, and on the line that read, "What brings you here today?" she wrote, "I think I am going crazy." She had no words for her state. She did not know she was feeling depressed. She only knew that she felt completely lost, like God had let her go floating into space. Yeesh. Okay, that was me. I don't like to remember it. I'm that medical student. So I would sit and talk to the psychologist about how I used to be, how I used to feel good, how I used to have hope, how I used, and there was no way for me to get back there. Okay, so guess what my therapist whips out? He whips out a poem called The Hound of Heaven by a famous poet named Francis Thompson, written during his opioid-addicted time in 1890. I'd never heard of him, and I go, what the heck? This therapist gives me the meat of the poem, and what sticks out to me is Francis Thompson felt completely lost, but what he was feeling was this hound of heaven was the divine presence pursuing him. And he was running away because he thought if the hound of heaven caught him, the hound of heaven would take everything from him. But instead, the hound of heaven saves everything for him. Now, weirdly enough, I felt a little bit of hope with that poem, even though I still didn't have a sense of a divine presence that was good. Okay, to complete this little mini story, before I end, I just want to tell you this wacky thing, this third medical student story. So she was one of my classmates. One day, months into that same year of depression, she looks at me and says, "Leslie, when I look at you, I just see hope." Hope? I said, hope? This has been the worst year of my life. I am so depressed. She goes, "Yeah, me too, but I see hope." So, okay, what am I trying to say here? We've all been at the brink, right at the edge of feeling despair. And sometimes at our lowest moments is when we are most likely to give hope to someone else. there's actually value in those times. Did Francis Thompson know he was going to write a poem that would become one of the most famous poems in the world? Did the man who committed suicide 100 years before Francis Thompson know that he would give him hope? Did I know I was passing on hope? No, it gets passed on. So let me just end with this little piece here. Okay, so there's a contrast in my mind of fear and hope. Fear and hope. Fear is like a predictor of negative things to come. Hope is somehow an idea of positive things to come. Okay, so fear triggers a part of our brain called the amygdala, the limbic system. And that place in our brain is connected to all the places that make us crave substances. But how can you just swap over from fear to hope? I'll just start hoping, woo, yeah. It doesn't really happen very easily. So let me give you an idea when you're stuck in a rut. Okay. Has anybody ever been stuck in a rut?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I hear oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. Okay, so one of the things I like to do is based on Byron Katie's work, which is you take the thought and you ask the thought if it's 100% true. Is it 100% true? Okay, so like, oh, this is going to be a big flop. Is that 100% true? Oh, well, I don't know. And as soon as you start doubting it, some of the fear starts to let up. Some of the amygdala starts to get calmed down. Some of the prefrontal cortex comes in and starts helping the thinking. So, last little thought here. What if? Has anybody ever said, oh my gosh, what if? What if this is a flop? What if I never have the relationship I want? What if this bad thing happens, this bad thing happens? What if? Okay, I'm going to suggest the next time you hear yourself saying, what if, what if, what if? Say something crazy in the opposite. What if I actually start feeling way better? Like, what if I actually feel manic? What if I marry the person I actually love? What if I win the lottery? Hey, what if I am voted the best air guitarist of 2019? Here, me. Because I did bring my air guitar. I'm going to play it tomorrow. But yeah, my air guitar, I brought it. Okay, so what if you start taking your thoughts opposite? All right, so the last hope things, I've got 4 little hope things I want to leave with you. Number 1, I have the poem Hound of Heaven by Francis Thompson as a free download. You can go to www.quitpainpills.com/hope. www.quitpainpills.com/hope. I want you to go there and get a free download of the Hound of Heaven. Now, it is a big, long poem, and it was written in 1890, so just be prepared. Okay, number 2, good news. There is good medical news. There's hope. There are now treatments that cure hepatitis C. Treatments that cure hepatitis C. That is something that causes people a lot of despair. You don't have to despair about it anymore. Okay, there is medication that helps people get off of opiates. I would say go to a doctor who can see you. If you're addicted to pain pills, if you're addicted to heroin, you can transition off with no withdrawal. And that's what I described in my book. Anything that you, okay, if you're interested in the book or the course or any of these downloads, for the next 30 minutes, I will be over in that building right there that says Hope Rocks with the artwork. And I'll have some cards if you want the free downloads. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Joe DeFino. Thank you, bands. Thank you, Hope Rocks. Thank you. Have a great rest of your